Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
And I might stay awake through the whole show, which would be great because it's my turn to talk this week.
I won't. I desperately need caffeine, and I don't have any at my house, so we'll try beer.
Yeah, that's what I've got too. So this might be a fun episode. It was a hell of a day at work today. Well, really all week, but really this morning, like extra. So, and yeah, so this could be fun. But good news is I got stuff for. Surprisingly, I beat the odds. Yeah. We'll see if it's any good.
It's like anytime I've drank on this show, it's always like a fun idea in your head. Like, what if I was a little buzzed, and how goofy and fun would that be? And it's always this. It's more like you don't really need another beer, but you're having one when you should just go to bed kind of mood.
Yeah, I was thinking like drinking by yourself at a dimly lit bar where it's not like we drinking, it's just like
none of my friends drink, so I'm always drinking alone.
So yeah, and that's what's always funny too, is it's like when I say having a beer, like I opened it right before the show, had nothing else to drink all night. It's not like I've had a few. By the end of the show, I'll probably be slurring, and it's less to do with the beer and more to do with the time of the day. But the beer doesn't help it.
No, but I mean, that's something I've realized as I've gotten older, is there's very little difference between been completely sober and been pretty hammered. I'm uncoordinated. That's how you know you're becoming an adult. Yeah. I'm uncoordinated. I mumble. I slur. I can't walk in a straight line. And it's a bad idea for me to drive. All these things are true, whether it's 0 drinks or 5.
Yeah. So, if you've not listened to the show before, each week we talk about stuff. I'm really bad at describing the show. Ben does it all the time. Different stories every week. Sometimes it's true stuff. Sometimes it's fake. A lot of times it's creepypastas, which I really, really thought was going to be this case, but it's not. I'm going to pay off.
It is what it is every single week. That's the best way I can describe this show.
Yeah, I always say it's stuff that we find interesting that we think maybe somebody else will, but if not, at least we did. So at least one of the two of us did. Whoever wrote it, we picked it for a reason. But I teased a couple weeks ago. I came across a topic that I really wanted to do, but just couldn't get it together in time. And that's the one that I have this week, which means it'll be utterly disappointing, because anytime you try to build something up or tease it ahead of time, it's like, oh, that's what you had.
Pretty much anytime I've actually been excited for a topic, those have been our weaker episodes. It's usually like, oh, this one's going to be perfect. It's usually like the last minute, spark of okay, this works, we'll see how it goes. That usually turns into a pretty good show. It's when I think I have my shit together.
I think the key is it's when because when we don't think it'll be that good is when you just don't give a shit, and that's when we go off on our stupid tangents and stuff. Yeah. But
that so anyway, we enjoy, but I'm sure our fucking 10 listeners hate.
Yeah, they're like, what are these idiots talking about now?
You have no comedic timing, just tell the story.
In fairness, nobody has any right to make it through our introduction section and then get mad at our rambling during the story, because we start every show with this good 10 minutes of just whatever.
I kind of want to meet the angry listener of the Non-Essential Podcast. We've told you everything you need to know about this in the first episode. If you're really unsatisfied, goddamn. Just waterboard yourself if you're that into misery. So
I do like to think that the CIA uses our show in place. They're like, we're not allowed to waterboard anymore. Well, some guy came running in, sir, I found something even better.
If the CIA wants to throw some travel tickets our way, we'll do a live show in an interrogation room.
It'd be our biggest audience. Yeah, is the one guy.
I'd be very excited about it.
Yeah. How's everybody doing today?
I'd be like, oh, I don't work for them. We just want to tell each other stories.
I will sign autographs afterwards.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the events of today's episode take place in Circleville, Ohio, which is literally like 20 minutes up the road from where I am here. Which
okay,
is what,
you're the culprit. I solved it.
God damn it. All right, see you guys next week. That was a short one. It actually takes place before I was born, so I've got a pretty good alibi.
I haven't seen a birth certificate. Fuck you. Like, you haven't proven shit to me. You're the killer.
Mine's in the same cabinet as Obama's or whatever.
That's a good.
I don't know.
That's a good reference.
Yeah.
That was
timely, and it makes me sound like I'm on the birther side of that thing, which I'm the opposite.
But it was also over 10 years ago now, which I know feels crazy. That feels like a couple years ago, but that was literally over a decade of people.
It feels like forever ago to me because I miss those days when that was the inane kind of crap that we had to deal with instead of all of this now.
Yeah.
But anyway, Circleville. If you're not familiar with it, which unless you're from like Circleville or the immediate area around it, you're not familiar with it. It's just a real, your typical like smaller Ohio city. I've only been there, like I've grown up here and I've only been there a handful of times.
It's the type of place that like is like, you know it, you like, it's like if you grew up near it, you probably know the place, but you can make up any factoid about it. And
exactly.
It would just be like, yeah, Elvis Presley got diarrhea there once. You know, and it's like nobody can argue with it.
Oh, yeah, right. That's exactly it. It's big enough that you've heard of it if you're from around here, but like, yeah, you don't know much about it. Or at least I don't. Like I said, I've been there a handful of times, mostly driving through it, which is why most people go there, is to either drive through it or attend the annual pumpkin festival that people seem to love for some reason. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a festival about pumpkins. You can get like pumpkin beer and pumpkin pie and pumpkin fucking condoms. I don't know. Like everything's fucking pumpkin.
And pumpkin beer is so fucking overrated. Every fucking October I have to put up with that shit. And it's like
I've had like one that's decent, but I wouldn't go out of my way. I wouldn't pick it over other beer.
The only thing I just pick it over is like there's some of those like fucking winter.
Yeah, winter's worse.
Winter festival shit,
or you get into real stupid shit like the hot chili beer that just is there to be weird. But anyway,
besides pumpkin pie, what do you do, pumpkins? That's what I want to know. Right in.
You rot on people's porches. Ohio, we
that
love
actually
our
looks cool.
This is probably an everywhere thing, but like, so they've got their pumpkin festival. There's a corn festival around here. There's a tomato festival. It's like every fucking vegetable gets a festival, but nobody in Ohio eats vegetables. So it's like they celebrate them because to an Ohioan, they're this mythical thing outside of like fried chicken and potatoes. It's like, wait, there's a pumpkin now? This is neat. Let's throw a party.
Like, let's fry it.
They do. So anyway, in 1976, school bus driver Mary Gillespie received an anonymous letter with an ominous message. Like, I think most anonymous letters are kind of ominous. Like, anonymous.
Ominous.
Yeah. That's when you're, down south and you get a letter that you don't know. Wouldn't that be awesome?
I got one
in
of
Mexico?
Those, ominous letters.
Now I'm just thinking about, like, if you're in Mexico, if the word for anonymous is actually one-anonymous.
It's like, not. And you should know better.
I should, because I speak Mexican Spanish a little bit.
I speak Mexican. I'm fluent in it. Guys, check this out. I'm going to talk to one of the locals.
Tamale.
Hello, amigo.
I've talked about it before. I know just enough Spanish that when I have to order something in a Mexican restaurant, I'd like freeze in terror of saying it like completely.
Much gracias.
Anyway, so this bus driver got an anonymous letter. The letter claimed that the sender was aware that Mary was having an affair with a man named Gordon Massey, who was the school department superintendent. And, like, who doesn't want to get with a school superintendent? That's such a glamorous, like...
Gordon Nasty Massey.
Yeah. It also warned Mary that she and her children were being watched, and something bad might happen if she did not come forward about the affair. So that is a little concerning. I think if I got a letter saying, hey, we know we're watching you and your kid... Like, if they're like, you're watching me, I'd be like, great, like... Watch me pick my ass here and wedge. And then they're like, you're watching your kid. You're like, hey, wait.
I like the idea that you never pick your ass until you found out you had an audience. And you're like, now it's
I'm classy.
time.
Why would I waste that material on myself?
Check out Steve's OnlyFans if you want to fucking cut your eyes out.
The letters continued, and when Mary repeatedly denied that there was an affair, the author started sending letters to her husband, Ron. The letters to Ron also warned that his wife's life would be in danger if Ron could not make her admit to the affair, which is interesting. I'm wondering the tone.
I'd be like, well, if she's having an affair, I don't give a fuck about any of this.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. At that point, if it's like you're cheating on your husband, and then she's like, "No, I'm not," and he's like, "Fine, I'm going to tell your husband she's cheating on you," and he's like, "I don't think she is." Like at that point, then it's like, who are you tattling on? Because it's like, well, somebody's got to care about this. Damn
he's
it!
Either not going to believe you, or
he doesn't care,
or he won't give a shit because hey, my loving wife fucking cheated on me. Who gives a shit?
Or they're swinger. Who knows? It's nobody else's business, right?
It's the government's business.
That's true.
It's my business.
You got to claim that shit on your taxes.
Hi, I'm Hank Government. Who are you fucking?
Answer this poll now, damn it. Next week, the show will be about Ben being arrested for demanding his neighbors tell him who they're
standing outside of voting polls, demanding who'd you fuck with.
Yeah, now who are you voting for? You're not.
I don't care about that. That's illegal, actually, to harass people for that. But the American people have a right to know.
Show me the law that says I can't ask who you're sleeping with. Yeah. One of the letters to Ron read, Gillespie, you've had 2 weeks and done nothing. Make her admit the truth and inform the school board. If not, I will broadcast it on CBs, posters, signs, billboards until the truth comes out.
I like how strong that is. You've done nothing. You've not done what I've demanded.
It's not even you have done nothing. It's 2 weeks and done nothing.
Make
nothing. I loved it because it was the most
Gillespie,
Ohio.
You shit the bed.
It's the most Ohio threatening note I've ever read, because that is your average letter that you get from people here in this area. So early on, Mary suspected that co-worker and fellow bus driver David Longberry, which is a great name, was behind the letters. Because apparently David had shown a romantic interest in her, but she had rejected his advances. It's not clear from my extensive research of like 3 articles whether Mary was married at the time or if it was like in the past, when she was single and he wanted to go out with her and she said no, whatever. History is full of stories about guys that have been rejected and done shitty things because of it.
Yeah, sometimes
it's a very common theme. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no quicker way to make a man a monster than, tell him no.
To simply say no.
Yeah.
Right.
It's always like, it's a very dramatic turn to like, oh, well, okay.
Isn't that funny? Because like the whole idea, like there's movies like Carrie where you have to like spend 3 hours like completely like ostracizing a woman before she snaps and turns into a demon. A guy, you just have to turn him down for a date once. Like,
yeah. It's very, we're very sensitive that way.
Yeah.
Because frankly, we are way too connected to our balls. And
especially if your name's Longberry, because you've got long balls.
Yeah.
Or at least one of them's long, because it's not Longberries.
And when every girl you come across tells you, hey, I don't want your long pendulum balls.
Ball. Singular
ball.
Sorry.
Then, that can get to a guy after a while. And you start doing something really fucking strange, like trying to oust an affair that you're not involved in.
In any way, right.
Like, I don't know why the fuck you would give a shit.
So Mary and Ron told Ron's sister and her husband, Karen and Paul Freshour, and Paul's sister, for some reason, about the letters. So at this point, these were the only 5 people that knew about the letters, because they had not gone to the police department for some reason.
That's too many people. 3 of them are going to end up dead, aren't they?
Maybe. It's weird to me how many people, like, I don't know, I get that they're just letters at this point, and people just have a general hesitance to, like, go to the police, and there's a whole list of reasons why, especially certain groups of individuals. I kind of get that distrust, but I think if I'm continually getting threatening letters, especially mentioning my kid, they're probably the first people I'd let in the loop, not my, brother-in-law and sister-in-law.
I wouldn't. Not for this. This is too stupid to...
So the Furious 5, as we shall now call
them,
just
write back. Just be like, I told him, he doesn't care.
Yeah, hold on.
Even if it's not, even if it's not true, like, I fucked another guy. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, so you're reading my notes again.
Yeah.
So the 5 of these people came together and decided that the best course of action was for Paul, who again was the husband of the victim's husband's sister.
I can't even begin to put together what you just said.
I know, and it gets...
Bad night to drink, but I can't follow a family tree for fuck all right now.
And it doesn't get better. But anyway, so they got together...
Mother's brother's former nephew.
And I may have said that about the most confusing way possible, but Paul, this other guy who is not the husband of the woman getting the letters or the guy getting the letters, but is related in some way to those two, should write a letter to this David Longberry fella and tell him to knock it off, buddy, pal.
knock it off, pal.
So Paul sent the letter, which after numerous revisions and multiple trips to the stationery store ended up saying something like, "We know you're writing the letters. Knock it off, pal."
Knock it off, long ball.
On a nice, long ball. And it was probably on like a nice piece of lined paper with like kittens playing with string around the borders or something. I don't know.
This is such a dumb way to like navigate any of this shit. Like, why letters?
Why do you have to come up with like a group of 5 people, like the fucking Lord of the Rings, and then you decide like, now, we got this. Let's write this guy a sternly worded letter telling him to stop.
To my dearest single testy, let me... You're very annoying. Let me count the ways.
Paul wrote the letter, and it apparently worked because the threatening letter stopped for a while. But then on the night of August 19th, 1977, Ron, who again was the husband of Mary, who was supposedly having the affair, received a phone call. Nobody knows who the call was from or what they said, but after hanging up, an angry Ron Gillespie went and got his gun and told his kids he was going to go talk to the person who had been writing the letters.
Dad's going to get killed.
A few hours later, Ron's truck was found crashed into a tree. Ron had been killed in the accident. An investigation concluded that Ron had been drunk and lost control of the vehicle. But interestingly, it was also discovered that Ron had fired a single shot from his gun from inside his truck prior to the accident. So he shot at something while he was driving the truck and then crashed into a tree. The circumstances of Ron's death seem suspicious, especially to those who knew the man. To begin with, Ron wasn't really known to get drunk. And secondly, witnesses say he hadn't been drinking on the night of the accident, like at all.
Yeah. I mean, we just assumed there was a gun there and a car crash. So, yeah, beer was involved.
Beer, yeah. But the official police report was that Ron had died as a result of a drunk driving accident, and there was no further investigation into the matter.
Okay, so that tells me the police chief did it.
Did it. Well, that line turns out like they kind of lied to me, so then I kept the lie in my notes. There was a little bit more investigation than that, but officially it ended with he was drunk and crashed his truck. After the death, other people began receiving letters which appeared to come from the same anonymous author. These letters claimed that Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe was involved in a cover-up related to Ron's death, which is really fucking weird to me, because now you're claiming that this guy was threatening this family if they didn't come forward about the affair. Then the husband died en route to go shoot the guy writing the letters. It gets covered up, and now the letter writer's pissed that it's getting covered up. Like, no.
What?
I want my story told.
I mean, hey, that's, a lot of psychopaths want the notoriety. They don't want, like, even if it's not a serial killer, there is, like, you don't do shit like this if you're not trying to exert some fucking power fantasy. And that kind of gets nipped in the bud if everybody thinks, like, the dude just died from a fucking car accident.
Especially if it hasn't become public knowledge about this supposed affair that he's trying to out, because now he's probably thinking that he or she, I should say, writing the letter, probably thinking that like the sheriff's in on covering up the affair, like, oh, he's trying to protect the superintendent and this woman as well.
Yeah.
So I guess that's probably what.
To be fair, that's immediately what I jumped to. So.
Mm-hmm. So he's claiming him as a cover-up, but prior to ruling it a drunk driving incident, the sheriff actually had expressed that he suspected another individual was involved. Probably didn't take Sherlock to figure that out if there was like a gun and a fired shot as well, and I'm sure the family told the story about what's been going on. However, the individual that he suspected passed a polygraph test, and they really couldn't put anything on him.
Fucking enough polygraphs.
I know, I don't know why. To this day, we still use them, and they're complete bullshit.
Yeah. Like, I thought they did a thing once where it was like a guy showed that he can fake it just by like, I mean, some people can just fake it because they know how to naturally, but like a guy found out you could like put a thumbtack in your shoe and just put a little bit of pressure on your foot when you answer, and it can give you whatever result. Yeah,
I mean, there's all sorts of different things there, but I've taken one because I had to for my one of my
for non-essential podcasts.
Yeah, they don't let just anybody podcast. You have to take a polygraph first. Mm-hmm. So I've actually gone through one, and it's less about the machine and more about like judging your reaction, which is why there's a lot of interpretation going on. And we've talked about police and when they think they know the answer ahead of time and how fucking good they are at doing that stuff. And like you say, if you just know how a polygraph works, it's looking for your body like changing to your responses. So as long as you just act, and it's why it's terrible at catching psychopaths, because they don't feel remorse or anything when they're lying. So it's not going to pick that up either.
Right.
So like I said, there's just so many holes in them. They're an okay tool to supplement other stuff when you only give a polygraph test and you're like, he passed. But I think it was more, you pass that and nothing else. Like, you can't link this person in any other way. There's not a lot you can really do, even if you do, like, deep down suspect it. And we don't know who this person was, because since they passed and had nothing against them, they're not going to go out and say, yeah, this guy, Tom Jones, the singer, we think he did it, because, that's... They at least did the right thing by not dragging somebody that may have been completely innocent like they thought. So I don't know nobody knows who they actually
I think like once a year, like, you should be good for a random hallway murder questioning. Like, you get the rest of the day off work, but you got to go downtown. Yeah, like,
wouldn't that be way better than jury duty? Like, jury duty sucks. If they're like, you're going to get interrogated based on this random murder, like, this sounds fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, just like, and it's just to destroy the stigma of, like, just because you're getting hauled away by the cops doesn't mean you did anything. It's
like,
let's normalize being hauled away by the police.
Right, like don't give them the opportunity to actually pin a bogus murder on you because they fucking do that, and that is terrifying.
Yeah, like, it's literally just like all fun and games, but the moment they ask you anything, it's, lawyer. And then you kind of laugh and like, okay, you're out of here. But don't say shit, because this is already a really bad idea, and they're going to arrest you.
So they couldn't pin anything on this guy, and when the blood alcohol test came back on Ron, it was at 0.16, which is double the legal limit. So he was drunk, and it's... which is weird, but at the same time, the family's like, oh, he wasn't drinking that night. It's like, yeah, but you would also say that if he was drinking, and you didn't want him to get blamed for just killing himself drunk driving.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So... Mary's husband's dead. And then, as it turns out, Mary was having an affair with the school superintendent, Gordon Massey.
No shit. Like, no fucking shit.
She always maintained, to this day, that the affair didn't start until after she started receiving the letters. Which is really fucking hilarious to me, because either that's true, and so the story goes like this. Hey, I'm not having an affair. Do. Hey, this letter says I'm having an affair. Maybe I should.
That's such bullshit.
The
thing is, like, it doesn't justify the letters and creepy shit, because again, it's none of his fucking business. But fucking, like, adulterers are so annoying. And the leaps in, like, technicalities and logic that they'll try to do to justify their shit behavior. It's
and the thing is too, and she doesn't say she didn't start having an affair till after her husband died. She says till after the letters started. Mm-hmm. So my actual guess is it's kind of a combination of those, and they're not both like true or false, but she was probably very emotionally close to this guy already, and maybe she hadn't slept with him, but then she did after the letter started, which would be weird, because you'd think like at that point you'd be like, let's maybe put the brakes on this thing, but
I don't think there's any fucking way. Because it's just too. Why would you do it once the letters start? Like, why are you just like, that's a good idea? I know, that's what's so fucking weird about it. It's like, that's never like how anybody enters an affair. It's like, hey, this thing I'm under the fucking microscope for, let's do it. Like, it's what a fucking dumb idea.
Right. So yeah, I think we're like, the whole world doesn't believe that, but whatever. The point, it doesn't really matter either way, like you said.
But the thing that pisses me off about it is because that's such a your timing is not why that's fucked up. Like, if your husband didn't know about it and you were doing it behind his back, like, it didn't matter when you did it. Like, right. Like, maybe that's a little more insult to injury to do it after, but I'm sure in her fucked up head, she was like, well, you see, it's not so bad because I waited until, I could get really caught. It's like...
Or maybe it was just one of those things she was looking to cheat on him, and this was the perfect cover. It's just like, nobody's dumb enough to cheat on someone with a person that they're being accused of cheating on them with. Like, perfect crime.
Now we're talking about an area that's horrifying to me, where you're just cheating with the goal of not getting caught. It's not because you want to fuck another person. It's because you want...
You want to not get caught.
You want to not get caught, so pick out the least likely person that anybody would think you would ever fuck. And that's your affair partner? That's terrifying.
Yeah, movie script is starting to form in my head. Oh. After her husband's death, whoever had been harassing Mary decided to start harassing, via mail, decided to start harassing her via signs left around town. Most of these signs were accused Gordon Massey of, again, who was a guy that she apparently was having an affair with. But these signs were accusing him of raping Mary's 12-year-old daughter.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, they're quite bold in their claims.
Where the fuck did that come from?
I don't know. But it continues along this path, so I guess strap in. Many of these signs were set up along Mary's bus route, which I guess is a good place to set them up if you're trying to, like, harass somebody. So one day, Mary came across one of these signs, and she decided to stop to tear it down. When she did so, she discovered that it had been booby-trapped to fire a gun, which had been hidden in a box and attached to the sign via a string. So I guess the idea was when you pull the sign down, it'll pull the string and the gun will fire.
What the fuck?
Mm-hmm. Surprisingly, the trap didn't work.
Fucking Kevin McAllister was her, like, jealous lover? What the hell?
That's what I said. The police had a new suspect, Wile E. Coyote.
God damn.
So when that suspect didn't pan out, they decided to check to see who the gun was registered to. As it turns out, the gun belonged to one Mr. Paul Freshour. Da-na-na. Again, that's Mary's dead husband's sister's husband, if you've forgotten, or like me, could not fucking keep any of this straight in your head because...
Was he one of the original 5?
He was. He was the one that wrote the first letter to Mr. Longberry saying, "Knock it off, buddy." So it was his gun. The police showed up at Paul's house and said, "What's the deal, Buster? Why is this gun of yours sitting in a box tied to a sign with your wife's dead brother's widow, blah, 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 blah." Something.
Now you listen to me, mister. You're nicked. You better tell me where you got the gun.
If you guys haven't figured out over 100 and however many 60 episodes or whatever, if I have to come up with dialogue, like if the story doesn't tell me like what people said, I always do it in like 1940s radio, like serial drama voice. That's the voice in my head.
To derail the show a little bit, but in this same vein, I don't know if I told you about this, but I've been watching serial killer documentaries lately.
Well, I mean, you don't have to tell me that part. I just assume.
I go in phases with it. And it had been a while, but there's one show I really liked, and it was a British series called Born to Kill. And there's the serial killer in London, and when they caught the guy, he, for some reason, he decided the best way to deal with it is hide in his attic completely naked.
Well, yeah. They can track your clothes, but they can't track your dick.
And so it's this big fat guy completely naked hiding in an attic. The police go to his house. And of course they look in the fucking attic because it's not fucking 1850. They look everywhere. And it was something out of Monty Python where like the sergeant opens up the attic and just sees this naked serial killer in the fetal position in this attic. And he's like, "Well, mate, you're nicked." Which I just loved. That's like, for a guy who's like a monster who's fucking murdered tons of innocent women, and then just to be like, "Well, buddy, we got you."
And he was probably, if it's like any of the things that I've seen, it's like, "Good show, governor." like half the time they're just like, because they treat it like a game or something. It's like, "You bested me."
Well, it's funny because they'll say it like that when they arrest him, and then they'll do the documentary, and it was like, "He had hollow eyes. He was one of the worst demons I've ever stumbled across. I couldn't take another case afterwards." But in the moment, it's like, "We got him." You know?
Well, imagine, though, that's a lot of pressure to put a single human being under when you finally catch this horrible serial killer. It's like landing on the fucking moon. Like, Neil Armstrong, he had time to rehearse that shit. This guy, you finally catch the guy, and it's just like, I gotta say something profound. It's like, "Well, fella, you're nicked." It's like, damn it, I fucked that up.
To be fair, like, in the moment, it's a shitty line, but afterwards, like, 2022, that's the best fucking gotcha punchline I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I know. I need to make a note to use that on somebody someday. Like, I don't know.
Well, mate, you're nicked.
I don't know if I've ever been in a situation in my entire life where I'd have the right to use that against somebody else, because I'm usually the one that gets nicked, but whatever.
Okay.
So anyway, back to this story. They showed up at Paul's house because it was his fucking gun, and they're like, "Hey, what's the deal?" So Paul took a long, slow drag off of his cigar and then lazily blew the smoke out and said, "Yeah," he replied. "That's my gun." Then he turned solemnly and looked out the window. "At least it was my gun. Once." I like to make it dramatic.
I'm imagining Eric Cartman.
Yeah.
Pulling some shit.
Much. Basically, he told him, "Yeah, that was my gun, but it got stolen a while back, but I never bothered to report it." Like, a lot of people actually don't. That's the one thing, again, I completely get distrust for cops. If I've got a gun registered to my name that traces back to me and it gets stolen, I'm fucking letting them know that immediately. Like, because usually whoever steals a gun doesn't steal it to, like...
Go target shooting.
Yeah, that's not true. That does happen, because sometimes people just want the gun.
People are just like, guns are cool.
But I've seen way too many of these shows where the gun turns up, like, murdering 8 people. I hate that. Somebody turns up murdering 8 people with the gun. I'm not blaming the gun for the murders. But if it's in my name, like, I don't want to deal with that. Because my luck would be the 8 people were murdered on the 8 times that I was home alone with nobody to verify my alibi. Like, son of a bitch. Anyway. So he told him it was stolen. We've done a lot of these shows now where inept law enforcement has ignored blatant warning signs and, like, bought just the flimsiest of excuses and allowed, like, criminals to continue operating. This isn't one of those. This time the bad cops kind of did the opposite. They certainly weren't convinced that Paul's gun had been stolen, and then just by chance used to, like, continue targeted harassment against a woman who they were pretty sure he was related to, but couldn't really remember exactly how, because it's fucking convoluted. I guess it's not that convoluted, but he was the woman's husband's sister's husband. So they asked him to submit some writing samples, because they were pretty sure that, like, this was their guy. But instead of using the same boring, tried and true method of collecting handwriting samples, which, you know, we're talking like I think it's early 1980s by this point. The study and comparison of handwriting has been around for a very long time by then. It's not a new science. It's not like DNA where it was just coming into its own. But instead of doing it the way that, like, they've done it forever, they decided to show Paul one of the letters and ask him to emulate it as closely as he could. Then they shouted, "Aha, it's a match!" and charged him with attempted murder and harassment.
Okay.
Like, I could just imagine being Paul. They're like, "Copy this as closely as you can." And you're like, "Okay," and you do it, and then they're like, "It matches."
I actually don't know how to write.
They're like, just put a piece of tracing paper over it and trace it. We just want to check something. I can't do that. And then it's...
Yeah. Anytime it's like there is a fine line of like you have to cooperate with the police to an extent, but then you just have to like just enough to like sit in a chair and be like, I can't do that.
I think like there's probably a lot of people that have thought this, but I really, really would like an opportunity to try to trick a handwriting expert. Not in a murder trial, because I don't want to ever be in a situation where I'm being tried for murder. But I feel like it would be super easy to fake handwriting. But what you really do is you don't ask them to write something now that they know that you're comparing it to something that they may have already written. You find other shit that they've already written and you look at that. But not in this case. By the time he went to trial, Paul's wife had divorced him, which would prove to make the trial even more difficult to follow because now Paul was the ex-husband of the woman who was the sister of the man who, prior to getting dead, was married to the woman who was accused of having an affair with a different man that she later swore she didn't, but now did have an affair with.
Yeah, kind of, sort of, once
all you
nothing,
really need to know.
Lovers.
All you really need to know is that in Circleville, everybody's sort of a little related. It's one of those towns.
Everybody fucking everybody here in Circleville.
Yeah. So, Paul was found guilty of attempting to murder Mary, And thus he was also presumed to be the one behind all those letters that the city of Circleville had been receiving for all those years. Because by this point, it was way more than just Mary and her now dead husband, but like lots of people were starting to get these letters.
Cool.
However, the letters didn't stop after he was locked up. And some were even sent while he was serving time in solitary without access to prison mail. So that was interesting. Although it goes both ways. It's like, well, that sure seems like he's not the letter writer. And it's like, yeah, but there's ways that he could have still been getting away with it. While he was still in jail, he'd eventually serve 10 years before being released on parole. Paul himself even received a letter that said, "Now, when are you going to believe that you aren't getting out of there? I told you 2 years ago, when we set them up, they stay set up." So, like, now they're this like a person's trying to sound like the Godfather or something.
Even the Godfather isn't that dramatic. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Like, Godfather would just be like, "We did the thing."
Right. And he wouldn't send the letter anyway. He would just have some other...
He'd have Tom Hagen do it.
Yeah, and carve him into you, like, to your torso while you're in jail. But I do find it interesting, but I saw nowhere that, like, told the story. It's all over the place, too. It really referenced the fact that it says, "I told you when we set them up, they stay set up," which is plural. And, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean more than one person's behind this, but it's interesting to me.
Could be Venom.
That's... yeah, that's true. Like I said, other people started receiving threatening letters, including the prosecutor. Prosecutor's a supervillain.
Yeah.
I am the prosecutor.
Like the prostaticator.
I will wreck your prostate, which is terrifying, by the way.
Or I will just see if you have something that needs to be checked out.
This
Come
feels a little
forth
large,
if you
buddy.
dare.
The prosecutor in Paul's case received a letter accusing him of murdering a pregnant woman. In 1994, the television show Unsolved Mysteries filmed an episode on the Circleville letter writer. So this guy never got a cool nickname. It's always the Circleville letter writer. Although, if you're somebody that writes... I guess if you're somebody that writes people letters on the regular, that is pretty, like, psychopathic. Like,
I mean, it's very Riddler type shit.
Yeah.
You know, which that can be fucked up in its own way, but...
Of course, again, this was like the 70s and 80s, so, like, today would be the Circleville email sender. But, so it wasn't as unusual. That. Yeah. The funny thing is, when they decided to do an episode on this whole case, they received a letter. And this is probably my favorite and the most Ohio letter of all the letters that I saw. It read, "Forget Circleville, Ohio, : do nothing to hurt Sheriff Radcliffe, : if you come to Ohio, you L sickos will pay, : the Circleville writer." El Sickos, where the fuck does that come from? We're in Ohio.
Yeah.
Like...
you Del Tacos will pay.
I guarantee that whoever wrote these letters, if they're still alive, voted for Trump.
No, I mean, Ohio. No offense.
Yeah.
But,
no, you're not wrong. But calling somebody that you don't like an El Sickos is such a Trumpy. I mean, fuck, it might have been Trump. He might be the Circleville letter.
You bad hombres.
So that was 1994 when they did the episode. Two more things happened in 1994. That was the year that Paul Freshour was released from prison. And that was also the year that the letters abruptly stopped. So Paul maintained his innocence up until his death in 2012. Natural causes, nothing mysterious there.
Yeah.
But many still suspect that it was him. There's a number of other suspects, though, of course. Paul's wife, for instance, had access to his gun. Again, they got divorced, and it sounds like something that started... It wasn't like he got accused, and she's like, you fucking criminal. I can't believe you were doing this to my family. You know, we're getting divorced. The divorce was in process. So she'd have kind of motive to like frame him. Although that seems very drastic and complicated way of divorcing somebody.
Unless she was also fucking the superintendent.
That's true. But she did have access to his gun, and her name was Karen, so, like...
So guilty. That.
David Longberry, if you remember, probably because it's a great name, the co-worker who Mary initially suspected, ended up committing suicide after raping an 11-year-old girl in 1999. What that has to do with his guilt in this case, I'm not 100% sure, other than he was pretty fucked up.
Yeah. I know it's a hard-hitting conclusion to come to, but, you know, we don't pull punches on this show. What a weirdo.
Yeah, like I said, it doesn't necessarily make him more suspicious in this stuff, but...
It doesn't help.
It does show... No, and it shows that when you say this guy was unhinged and had, like, dangerous sexual fantasies or attachment issues, she wasn't wrong. Some suspect that the writer was none other than William Macy, who was the son of Gordon Macy. Apparently, some of the early letters were signed with a W, which is a big fucking clue to leave out of the story. But, again, I wasn't told it till the end, so I'm slamming that card down on the table now. And I guess if he knew like his dad was having an affair, it's definitely possible that he would like lash out at them, because a lot of kids, like, if they find out one of their parents is cheating, you know, they get really upset at the other person because they view them as, you know, breaking up their family.
Right.
Then there's El Camino Man, which is, God, I love that. Like, that's what he's referred to as El Camino Man. Apparently, a witness or multiple witnesses reported seeing a man with a yellow El Camino pulled over on the side of the road where the booby-trapped sign was found just about 20 minutes prior to Mary finding the booby-trapped sign. Coincidentally, at the time, Karen, who again was the sister of the dead husband, was dating a man who drove a yellow El Camino. But in Ohio, like, every third car is a yellow El Camino, so I don't... That's not a true fact, but nobody fucking knows that if you're not from Ohio. That's, again, one of those things that you'd hear and be like, yeah, there's probably a lot of El Caminos in Circleville, Ohio.
Yeah, they just drive in a circle.
I love the fact that they know that this car was seen, and it's a very unique car. They know that this woman tied to all this stuff, or at least very closely related, like, in all this stuff, was dating a guy that drove that car, or a similar car. And they don't use his name as a suspect. He's still El Camino Man. Like, maybe that's what she called him. Like, they went to interrogate her, and she's like, who's your boyfriend? She's like, he's El Camino Man. That's all I know him by, I swear. When he told me that was his name, it was so hot, I just couldn't help.
That's more bad supervillains. El Camino Man.
I saw one article, but didn't save it, so it's not in the citation, like in the sources on our page, that said that more recent investigations brought in more handwriting experts who took a less ridiculous approach to examining Paul's handwriting and still concluded that the letters were probably written by Paul. So there's that. Though a number of the letters were sent while he was in jail, those letters could have been written ahead of time or semi-ahead of time, and mailed by an accomplice or something, I guess. I always kind of thought prisons tracked what mail was coming in and out, but apparently not, or at least not in the 80s.
It depends on the times and stuff. I
would
some
hope
prisons
that
were pretty loose about it. That's actually like a big argument that's happening right now, where like prison mail systems are being outsourced to like these companies that basically make it so if you're going to mail anything to a prisoner, instead of them getting the letter, they get a scan of the letter, or like it has to be basically a digital copy of what you're sending.
And I do think it's pretty invasive to say that some human being is going to have access to or read every letter that you get or goes out.
Yeah.
And some people are going to argue and say, well, these people are violent. And so, well, there's different criminals, different kinds of criminals doing different kinds of crime. Like,
yeah. And we've had topics like this on where like prison and the justice system have come up, and like it's where you have to like sort of figure out and answer like, what is the point of putting people in these things? 'Cause like mail and shit is like it's easy to say like, well, why aren't they checking everything they do? But it's like mail is one of the few ways they have a human connection still to the outside
and that's why
world.
I wanted to like go on and clarify, like, I don't think every prisoner should have every letter read all the time. Probably would be a good idea to just pay attention to how much mail's coming in and out from a prisoner who's accused of writing threatening letters to people, though.
Right.
Like, maybe check a couple of their letters here or there when that specifically is the crime that they're in jail for. So, and I would, knowing the prison system, I would kind of suspect that they probably did, and just may or may not admit it.
I assume like there's probably no official policy, but I wouldn't be surprised if like prison guards were like opening letters and stealing drugs out of them and shit.
I mean, that comes up all the. I don't say all the time, but yeah, I know that happens.
So, like, I mean, yeah,
but. So, lastly, some people suspected that the letter writer was actually Mary herself. She was indeed having an affair, and at the time of her husband's death, so it's possible that she wanted him out of the picture. And so I guess it could have started as a like, oh no, I got caught type thing, hoping the husband would leave her, and when he wouldn't believe it, like, then she ended up having him killed. I don't know.
Or you could just admit it. And then the
say, I don't want
fucking
to be
show
with
would
you
be
anymore.
over. Yeah.
But that's why I don't, after the stuff I've read, which doesn't make me an investigator or privy to a lot of the facts, but I don't see Mary as a very viable suspect. I mean, at this point, like, anybody could have done it. Spoiler alert, they don't know to this day who fucking wrote the letter. It could have been.
Because he was like, think about that last letter to Unsolved Mysteries or whatever, where it was like,
El Sickos.
The more important part of it is like, leave the sheriff alone.
Yeah, out of all the stuff going on, they said leave the sheriff alone. The guy that was barely in any heat.
Yeah. Like,
one letter accused him of a cover-up.
But in poker terms, that's what we call a tell. And by tell, I mean you flipped your hand over and showed me.
And like I said, mix that with what you said, which is way more scientific, with what I said, which is El Sickos is a term that I could picture a rural Ohio sheriff using.
Absolutely.
100%.
See, this is why we're a good team. I have the facts. You have the prejudice. And we can just... And
the first-hand knowledge. I am an Ohioan. Like, I'm speaking from 40 years of experience.
It's strong prejudice. It is deeply rooted. Ohio, anti-Ohio through and through, in a way only an Ohio boy could be.
Yeah, somebody that never intends of leaving Ohio.
but God damn it, I know a guilty Ohioan.
Whoever it was sure knew a lot about the people of Circleville. For starters, they were correct about Mary and Gordon's affair. Also, that prosecutor I mentioned, killing a pregnant woman, turns out he did have an affair with a woman who got pregnant with his child and then ended up dead. Although they never linked him to... It didn't sound like he actually murdered her, but in somebody's... We can probably all get at least a decent profile in our heads of the type of person writing these letters, and that's the type of person that even if you didn't directly physically murder somebody, you would call them the murderer for that whole situation playing out, which may or may not be a wrong accusation. Also, a doctor who was actually the doctor that performed Ron Gillespie's autopsy and who had apparently received accusatory letters was later discovered to be a pedophile who ended up being charged with 12 counts of pornography, obscenity, indecent exposure, gross sexual imposition of a minor, blah, 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 blah.
Jesus fuck. Can Circleville slow the fuck down about being fucking weird?
It's more like Circle Jerkville.
It's been one day since we had a fucked up incident here in Circleville.
Well, that's what's interesting is like this story nets a bunch of random people, and then it's like it turns out they're all raping and like having affairs and all sorts of shit. It's like, what the hell's going on in Circleville? There's a reason why I don't go to Circleville. I've driven through it to get to other places.
We're gonna get a Circleville letter.
I know we are, because that's a lie. The reason I don't go to Circleville is there's just honestly no reason to go to Circleville.
Yeah, unless you're up to fucking weird bad shit,
or you like pumpkins,
which they're probably fucking. Let's be real.
Yeah, that's why it's so popular. Why do you think the jack-o'-lanterns are all grinning? So they got that look on their face. So yeah, that last thing, like that was the end. I don't have a grand ending to this story. Like I said, they never definitively caught who was writing the letters. I think it's a very good chance that once it started, multiple people were involved.
I was gonna say, my one of my favorite movies is A Shot in the Dark. It's the second Peter Sellers Pink Panther movie, and this is a spoiler, but it's fucking 70 years old now or something. But at the end of it, it's like it's like a whodunit, murder mystery. But at the end, it's like everybody who lives in this giant castle is like all guilty. And by the end of it, like Inspector Clouseau's just like, well, they were all murderers except for her. She was a blackmailer.
Yeah. See, and I think because by the time it got big enough that everybody was aware of what was going on, it does seem like something that people would jump in on. Like if you had dirt, and you know how neighbors are. We have the Nextdoor app nowadays that basically does this every fucking day, just electronically instead of sending paper letters.
Right.
So I think that's the most reasonable explanation. That's why, Paul was getting letters in jail and they were still being sent. Doesn't mean he didn't send them. Doesn't mean he didn't set the fucking Looney Tunes-esque booby trap. Although Karen might have. Multiple people could have been involved in the initial thing.
I'm sure knows? When it's just like fucked up letters and like manipulation and blackmailing and shit like that, like that's ripe for like copycat culprits too. So even let's say this did start with just Paul, people copied the Zodiac and Jack the Ripper. Of course, they'll like keep up the front to just fuck with people.
Yeah,
especially in Circleville.
Just because they think it's. What else are you going to do?
Yeah, pumpkins won't be back until October
next fall. Yeah, they don't even do it around Halloween. It's late August, I think, September. I don't know. I have never gone Circleville. It gets a lot of people to this stupid pumpkin show, but Circleville's it's one of those towns that's big, like I said, big enough to know about, but it's got one main road in and out of it. So it's a fucking clusterfuck. And pumpkins are not something that are grand enough to make me put up with that. But people around here, they fucking love it. People in their pumpkin show. I don't know. Like I said, I'm concerned for. Yeah.
When you call it a pumpkin show, that sounds like some like sex shit and cyberpunk.
Well, it might be that too. Yeah. Maybe that's again.
I've not been.
Maybe that's why it's. Maybe that's why it's popular. I'm picturing a bunch of like pumpkin spice lattes and shit, and you go and it's like just a giant pumpkin orgy. Like,
yeah. Oh, that's another one. They fucked up lattes too.
Yeah,
man,
I know.
Pumpkins need to back the fuck off. All right. And Circleville needs to stop with the weird shit. Have one normal fucking year, please.
In fairness to Circleville, this stuff all ended in the 80s, and they've been relatively normal Ohio Strange for the last 30 years or so.
You have to have one normal year before we'll bring the pumpkin show back. That's why
it's funny.
It's like a fucking mass protest.
I don't know. They didn't do it, of course, the first year of COVID. I don't know. They might not have done it.
Officially, they didn't do it. Some fucking
people were out on their lawns with pumpkins. Like,
fuck it.
Fuck the government. You can't take our pumpkin festival.
So nobody wanted to. Nobody cared.
But since they had to skip the one, now when I talk to people and about the pumpkin festival, they're all just like, like it's not there's not a lot to do there. I'm like, but people used to like.
Turns out our lives are pretty empty.
Yeah,
COVID revealed that we need. We skipped
hobby. 1 year. We skipped 1 year and realized we didn't miss it. Like
we all just sort of watched TV that night and had a lot more fun.
Fun, yeah. We've been lying to ourselves for decades that this was a thing that we looked forward to. So, anyway. But that's what caught my attention. Is it's such a batshit story, and it's like I said, an unsolved mysteries episode. Not that that's like the pinnacle of anything, but it's something. And then to find out that it like happened 20 minutes from where I live, and I've never fucking heard of it. It's like, huh?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of cool. So. I may not have a topic for a while because I think the time I have to spend writing is going to be sending people letters. I just think it sounds like a cool idea.
They'll just go to me. And every letter is just adding another day to how long we've been doing this show.
I don't have your new address, so my first letter will be threatening letters to the post office out there. Like, if you don't tell me Ben's address.
Anyway, that's the show. Yeah, I'm kind of deflated because, it is an interesting twist and turn, but I there's always these parts of me where it's why I never got into like unsolved mysteries and shit. Is like
because they're unsolved.
Yeah, what's the point of that? Like a bunch of people going like, I don't know. It's like awesome.
It is. That's like the most disappointing of the. I like them when they're relatively modern stories, so there's still actually a chance of like catching the person.
That's why I like, that's why serial killer documentaries are. You get that you're nicked moment, and that's what I want.
And those are always fun because it's either the person you least suspected or the person that was very fucking obvious the whole time.
99.9% of them are so like, I mean, it's easy to say because you're looking at their mugshot and shit, but when you see like photos of them with like family and stuff, it's like, no, that fucker's evil.
He's wearing a human head on his face.
They're always wearing like jeans way too high. And it's like they're up to some shit.
I love the 70s serial killers because they all have that same look where...
They all wanted to be Ted Bundy.
Right, and you get how they got away with it because you look at them and you say, there's no way this like jackass could ever murder somebody. Look at him. He can't even dress himself. Like, and then they murder you. But anyway, yeah, like you said, that's all the show.
That's all the show. We're done.
We're over.
We're over. It's over. We'll never make another one again until next week when we're bored.
This is where we do our brand new call out thing, though. If you liked this episode, send us threatening anonymous letters in the mail. I would genuinely be excited to get one because it means somebody's listening.
Yeah, sometimes I just want to feel heard.
Until the realization dawns on me that they somehow got my physical address. That part would be kind of...
Yeah, so send your threatening email to Steve... And he'll let me know about it, and I can live through him. See you next week.